Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Aria. Before I start with the video, please like and subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content. Today's video is about some very suspicious disappearances. I find it very intriguing myself, and I believe you will as well. Since this has happened, people have speculated and decided on one theory as to what happened and how these people disappeared, but I myself still find it very strange and some questions have still been left unanswered. On the 15th of December in the year 1900, a steamship known as the Arctur, on its way to Leith from Philadelphia, was passing Eilean Mor. Eilean Mor is one of the islands of the Flannan Isles off the coast of Scotland. The ship's crew noticed a very unusual sight. The lighthouse on Eilean Mor's light was not shining. This is a very extremely dangerous hazard in the bad weather they were in. The Arctur reached Leith in Scotland on the 18th of December, just 3 days later. The captain of the Arctur decided to report the lighthouse's light situation to the Board of Lighthouses. After the report, a relief vessel known as the Hesperus was sent to investigate this island. The vessel was only able to reach the island on the 26th of December due to how bad the weather was. It was already known at the time of arrival that the lighthouse was manned by 3 men: James Ducat, age 43, Thomas Marshall, age 28, and Donald MacArthur, age 40. These 3 men had different levels of experience in manning the lighthouse, but were still very much competent for the job. Very mysteriously, when the crew from the relief vessel arrived, none of the men were seen on the island to greet them. The vessel immediately sent a relief keeper, Joseph Moore, to the lighthouse to investigate this strange situation. The entrance gate to the compound of the lighthouse was closed, as well as the door of the lighthouse itself. The flagpole on the island was without its flag. The boxes usually containing their provisions were empty and sat on the dock for refilling. The clock in the kitchen had stopped working. Inside the small house, the table had been set for a meal but had not been touched, and a chair was toppled over. In the bedrooms, the lighthouse keepers' beds were not made either. There was absolutely no sign of life in this lighthouse besides a canary sitting in its cage. It was almost as if, right in the middle of going about their lives and the men being in the middle of completing a daily task, they just simply disappeared into thin air. The keeper that had first docked off the vessel, Joseph Moore, returned back to the boat to report to the captain what he had found on the island. Joseph Moore would be accompanied back on the island by 2 more crewmen to inspect it further. The men found that the oil lamps had been cleaned and refilled. A set of oilskins, which is a waterproof item of clothing, was left behind. It was very suspicious that this item of clothing had been left behind due to the bad weather. The lighthouse keepers knew that normally they would not leave this lighthouse without the items of clothing, as the weather could get so bad and dangerous that without it they would simply not be able to work outside. The entire island and its surroundings were completely searched. However, no clue came up as to what happened to the men or where they went or anything that could lead the investigators into the right direction. The Hesperus relief vessel left Eilean Mor and returned back to the mainland, leaving Joseph Moore and the 2 men who accompanied him earlier behind on the island. They were left behind to tend to the lighthouse, as the other 3 keepers were of course nowhere to be found. The captain of the Hesperus vessel, Captain Harvey, would send a telegram to the lighthouse board that would read the following: "A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane." The men left behind from the vessel continued to search the island from top to bottom after they were left behind, but of course nothing had been found. The men, however, did discover extensive damage to the western side of the island, and this might have given them an idea or a clue as to what could have happened to the lighthouse keepers. A box set up in a crevice in the cliff face about 33 meters or around 108 feet above the water was completely broken and its contents all strewn about the place. Railings on the cliff were completely bent, and a stone weighing around a ton or 1,000 kilograms had been completely moved out of its place, presumably by the storm. Even at the very top part of the cliff, where the men would have been, standing at around 60 meters or 200 feet above sea level, some grass and soil had been removed as if they were just ripped out completely from the ground. The soil and grass were ripped out as far as 10 meters into the land from the edge. The men reported that the damage on the west side of the island was very hard to believe unless actually seen. They also stated that the island and the lighthouse itself were in complete disarray, but a very strange disarray. The official investigation of this incident started just 3 days after the discovery, on the 29th of December in the year 1900. A superintendent, Robert Moorhead, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from the Northern Lighthouse Board, arrived at the island to conduct the investigation. Robert had decided to take on this job as he knew the 3 keepers personally and was the person to ask them to become keepers of this lighthouse in the first place. Superintendent Moorhead was able to determine that the oilskin, as mentioned earlier, was left behind by MacArthur, who simply went out in the wild storm with only his shirt on. He also speculated that the other 2 men, Ducat and Marshall, were however wearing the oilskins and left the lighthouse to the western side where the extensive damage was now seen, to tend to perhaps the box on the cliff face. This action of the men of leaving the lighthouse to the western landing without attending to the light was apparently a violation of the rules, as the lighthouse was not to be left unattended at all times. Can we then assume that it was an emergency that the men had left without tending to the light? Perhaps the last man, MacArthur, had left the lighthouse in a rush to go assist the other men. As directly quoted from Moorhead after the investigation, he theorized, "From evidence which I was able to procure, I was satisfied that the men had been on duty up till dinner time on Saturday the 15th of December, that they had gone down to secure a box in which the mooring ropes, landing ropes, etc. were kept, and which was secured in a crevice in the rock about 110 feet above sea level, and that an extra large sea had rushed up the face of the rock, had gone above them, and coming down with immense force, had swept them completely away." The conclusion after the investigation was that basically, while these men were going about their daily tasks, securing the box, possibly worried that something might happen due to the weather conditions, a very big wave from the ocean had gone above the cliff surface while the men were working there and had just swept them away into the ocean. This conclusion was also determined to have happened on the 15th of December, just a day before the Arctic ship spotted the lighthouse and noticed that the light was not on. So, despite this conclusion of it happening the day before, there's no solid evidence that it couldn't have happened possibly before the 15th of December. However, considering the set table with the dinner that was not touched, I think it's safe to assume that it did happen on the 15th of December. Allegedly, a while after the incident, speculations rose around a found logbook. Some evidence of logs in the supposed book state that on the 12th of December, 3 days before it was thought that the men had disappeared, Thomas Marshall wrote of severe winds he had not seen in years. He also wrote that James Ducat had been unusually quiet and that Donald MacArthur had been crying. The 13th of December log, so allegedly 2 days before their disappearance, it had been reported that the storm was ongoing and that the men were praying. These logs are very strange, as no storms had been reported on those specific days, and the men wouldn't be praying as they should have been aware they were safe in the structure of the lighthouse. It's also noted that crying was unlike the veteran Donald MacArthur. The last log entry was on the 15th of December, and it stated that the storm was over and that the seas were calm on that day. After a bit of further research, I can safely say that this logbook was completely falsified and that there never was one to begin with. That was mere conspiracy. Along with the falsified logbook and this case gaining fame, many other theories and conspiracies have since been brought forward, ranging all the way from an inside job that the men had arranged for a ship to take them away and stage their deaths. Another conspiracy theory surrounded an alien abduction, and another theory speculated that one of the men went insane, murdered the other 2, dumped their bodies in the ocean, and then jumped into the ocean himself. There is no evidence to support these alternative theories though, and the final assumption that the men were washed away is plausible, as this was most evident. The damage to the western landing of the island was something only a wild storm and rough seas could do. The circumstances of the up and abandoned house, the toppled chair, the uneaten meal, and the abandoned box still left set up in the crevice, but broken, and MacArthur, all indicate to the theory that the men had been washed away. The final theory is that MacArthur, while sitting in the house watching the other two men, noticed the wind picking up, the storm becoming wilder, and the waves of the sea gradually growing larger. It's then said that he fled the house, which explains the up and abandoned circumstances, to go warn the other men, but in the process of doing so, it was too late, and the three men were washed away. In the end, this was narrowed down as a tragic accident, as the men were not truly aware of just how dangerous the conditions were. This incident has inspired many forms of art and film, such as the movie The Vanishing from 2018. The Vanishing provides a fictional twist on the events surrounding the men's experience on the island and their disappearance. Another more recent film in 2019 came out, known as The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is a horror film loosely depicting two lighthouse keepers slowly descending into madness due to their isolation on the creepy island. That's the video for today. Thank you so much for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this.